It's my feel-good breakfast show.
You'd swear he supports another North London footballing club with that look of self-satisfaction on his face. Yes, we will talk a little bit about Spurs this morning, or the lack of connection thereof, and broach all of the news. Friday is here at last, but so are the first signs of winter. Oh, it is coming. What does that mean? Stage 11, we don't know. Places like Bloemfontein, Kimberley, seeing single-digit overnight temperatures regularly now, so we've seen the shift. If you're the kind of person whose brain immediately starts thinking how that will impact load shedding, you're in the right place. We'll delve into that with our news editor, Roy Simpson. He is back to take a look behind the newspaper headlines, because often, I think because we become so desensitized, we don't look behind the newspaper headlines. First of all, how are you?
Morning, it's Friday.
It is
I'm
a
good,
Friday,
thank you.
buddy. I know, we are feeling lighter. It's a slightly chilled day today, which is a good thing because there's a lot to chew on. Let's start with a very clean sweep within SA tourism. This is crazy. Did you expect this level of reaction? Break it down for us now. Is the whole board going today, being dissolved?
Yeah, that's it. Although, when you say that, there's not much left. No, literally.
The gatekeeper left, and you go, yeah.
Patricia DeLille wrote a letter to them on the 6th of April, saying that she intended to dissolve the board. And basically, you've got some time to tell me why I shouldn't do this in terms of my powers as the Minister of Tourism.
Legal recourse, yeah.
And in the time that's passed since then, 8 of the 11 board members have resigned, which is a pretty clear answer to, no, we don't have a reason why you shouldn't. And also a desire to create distance for themselves as individuals.
Just to get away from the story, yeah.
So there are only 3 people being axed today, to be
But that's all
correct.
that's left, yeah.
Yeah. No, I didn't expect it. I think when we last chatted, which must have been early in February when the story broke, I was quite bleak, and I said that I thought the deal would probably still go through. Admittedly, we had a different tourism minister at the time. And I think that kudos has to go to Patricia DeLille for taking this action she has taken. And the other thing is that it's always been looming, it's always been necessary, because once Envedumini and Ravi and Rosemary left, they were the only 3 people who actually had tourism experience.
And had roles. But I was going to ask, because this speaks to a much larger question, which is terrifying. If there was no reason to keep an entire board there building up to this one mistake, it means that there was very little reason to keep them there before this one mistake, which speaks to the role of the tourism, you know, that mechanism. If the entire board is pretty much ineffectual and it took a mistake for us to find that out, that in itself is terrifying. So has enough been done? Because this feels like we want accountability. Boy, they gave us some accountability.
And I think it's a useful one. I think the optics are good. Everyone was so incensed by this. Because remember, this R1 billion thing came about. I mean, we're still in the midst of heavy load shedding, but I feel like...
When that wave was breaking almost.
Yeah, like then it was fresh and it was a new
The pain was fresh.
Now we've sort of frog in water adapted to it. So it is a really useful place to show the optics of government is capable of doing something.
What you can do in a very PR-driven space as well.
But the board was useless, you're right.
And that being said, we don't have a tourism board now, so hop to it.
Yeah, I think again, we're going to see quite quick action now. Also, tourism's a very important part of our economy.
Yeah, now more than ever, yeah.
But yeah, we seem to function fine with a very inept board.
Because the people stand up, the small to medium businesses have got you there, we've got you. It's been signed, the Electoral Amendment Bill.
Yes.
Is this the great hope? I feel like I'm watching the origin of Star Wars or something emerging here. Are we seeing that? So could we see independence at next year's election, or is there going to be a legal pushback? What's the next phase of white rapids that need to be negotiated here?
Oh, lots of white rapids ahead. It's both of those. We will see independence in the next elections, and that's really good. I think that is perhaps the most important innovation that we can make.
Because it's kind of a maturation, if you will, of our system. Hey, it feels like a coming of age.
Well, yes, because we've been looking at the system and we can see it doesn't work. It's not working for us, the people. The political parties are so entrenched in their own objectives that there's no accountability, there's no responsiveness to us as citizens. By the same token, though, Oh, absolutely, there are legal challenges coming. We know that Mmusi Maimani's Build One South Africa has said they're going to challenge it, although they've pegged the 1st of May as the date they're going to approach the Constitutional Court. We know the Independent Candidates Association is going to. We can expect more to join. In fact, there was speculation from the ICA, from the Independent Candidate Association, that there might be up to 40 organizations that would join this. The problem is then it becomes unwieldy. Also, the Constitutional Court is busy with a lot of things. So it could take up to 3 months before they finally get on.
The process itself can bring about the outcome,
And then they can take months to deliver a judgment. So there will be court judgments. There will be some kind of an outcome that I think is going to tweak this in some way. But at the same time, realpolitik, I think they've managed to kind of shepherd it into a place where there's not going to be enough time to do very much.
Okay.
We're going to go in.
They've out-politicked it. They've done it. But I think it's one of those things that's got traction now. It started, like you said, it started something fresh and new, an innovation in politics, and you don't often hear about that. How does this affect you, though? That's what I'm interested in hearing, please. If anything is affecting you, especially load shedding and the prospects of going into winter with higher levels of restriction, let us know how that's going to affect you. 063-408-8863. Yes, we'll broach that in just a moment.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. We are still taking a look at some of the major news stories here in South Africa and breaking across the globe with news editor Roy Simpson. He's back with us to help us understand the implications. And that's what we've been trying to grapple with on our show, is because we see how so many of these news stories affect us on the ground floor, but we don't make the connections. So that's what this is about, and we need you to make that connection right now. 063-408-8863. How are you feeling about this crazy world at the moment? And one of those crazy headlines that might need some serious explaining is taking place in Sudan. And we often talk about this part of the world, quite pivotal for all the wrong reasons. Now, there's been fierce fighting in the capital Khartoum all week. Roy, what is going on? We kind of say fierce fighting Sudan very often.
Yes.
Let's be honest, but there is something, a renewed tenacity in that space. What's going on?
There is. Maybe context here is important because you kind of need to understand how we got to where we are now. And Sudan has had, from independence, just a series of coups. It's one of the most coup-ridden countries in the world.
Has it ever had a legal progression? Has it had a normal phase of politics?
No, I have a feeling it hasn't.
It's never
actually.
had that. Wow.
And there are a couple of African countries where that's true, and a couple in Southeast Asia. Certainly Sudan has just had such a checkered past. And one of those coups was in '89. And at that point, Omar al-Bashir came to power. And he came to power as a military leader. And he managed to establish a dictatorship, effectively.
Continuity of sorts.
Yes, it lasted for 30 years. But in the process of building that dominance and that hegemony, he did some really problematic things. So the big problem all along has been a mainly Muslim Arab north and east versus a mainly African and Christian south and west.
Okay.
And in the process, there were militias all over the place. And there was an Arab nationalist outfit called the Janjaweed. Okay. And those rebels were really organized. And Omar al-Bashir...
Presumably with backing from a larger diaspora.
Gaddafi, for example, was very involved in that. So Omar al-Bashir took them under his wing, and they committed insane atrocities. The rape, the murder, all the things you would expect.
Every box,
And as a result, he had the International Criminal Court issue a warrant for him, which we, of course, didn't execute when he came to visit us. But by the time he came to visit us, he was already in deep, deep trouble. He'd used the National Army in the south, he'd used the Janjaweed, who then he changed into the Rapid Support Forces, the RSF, and they'd been dealing with things in Darfur, which is where all of that happened. And he managed to, through force,
just force of will and force
kind of keep things stable. But in 2018, the price of petrol and the price of bread tripled, and he just lost all authority with the people. And they staged this incredible sit-in outside the army headquarters in 2021, where they just said, "This is it. The Zerk must go," and there was this mass sit-in. The whole process of how the Sudanese people did this was amazing. They literally
Especially
just sat there.
considering their path up until this point.
Absolutely. And what happened was the army responded and ousted him. And so we got to this point where those two armed groups, the RSF and the army, collaborated to get rid of Omar al-Bashir.
But now what's there? What?
Well,
So
what happened then is they put in a civilian government, and then after, not very long, staged a coup. And that's where we are sort of up until recently, where you had the army commander in the form of Abdel Fattah al-Burhan was running the country, but he was doing so very, very much with the military support of the RSF guys, led by a general who's known as Hemeti. And now the two of them are fighting.
And now they're butting heads. And I mean, there are positive threads within this from a very dark situation. We certainly understand it, but it does sort of, to an extent, feel like an awakening of sorts. But in a country with a track record like that, there's been no other way. So how do you show or highlight or do it in a different way? We'll continue to ask these questions, and I want to find out in terms of a ceasefire and what that next step is. Roy will delve into that in just a moment. Please weigh in if you've got any stories that we need to be talking about right now. Let us know.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us. We are chewing on the gristle of the news at the moment. And of course, we were talking about renewed conflict like it's ever stopped in Sudan. But two factions fighting at the moment, deadlock. Are we going to see a ceasefire? We know the very complicated past that it's brought us to this point.
Yes.
Is it a very complicated future? Is there an opportunity? Because it feels like, I would say, the most nervous job in the world is being an actual politician in Sudan and not connected to any army. I mean, who would take that job?
Well, there was a guy called Abdullah Hamdok who was prime minister, but he's been in and out of jail the whole way through this process.
Yeah.
And what's past his prologue thing is important. The context we just chatted about really does matter, because the situation we're in now, where you've got these two factions fighting in the capital city. I mean, they're shelling each other within Khartoum. That's insane.
Essentially destroying their home base.
So one of the diplomats said, you've seen the pictures of Ukraine, that's what it's like, but in a small city.
Yeah.
And the problem is that Hemeti that I spoke about, the RSF guy, the atrocities he's committed have attracted the ICC's attention. So he needs to stay in power to avoid going to jail.
Yeah.
At the same time, the guy who's been running the show at the moment is also in a position where he's now complicit in a couple of atrocities.
A lot at stake.
So they also own gold mines and things as these military outfits. So everything is set up for there not to be a solution. And I think the only way out of this is probably through the African Union. Because the Russians are in there, the Americans.
But I was going to say, we've
Yeah.
seen what happens sadly, in our neck of the woods when a vacuum is created in this sense. The humanitarians don't necessarily step in.
No.
There are a lot of organizations, when you look at the route and the access this part of the world offers, there's so much incentive for the wrong people to get involved in that space. So I hope you are right, my friend. I hope you are right. It's always interesting when the news channels become the news themselves, not us, okay, because we're not really a news channel. But of course, that is a reference to America's Fox News paying 14 billion rand to settle a court case about their reporting on the US elections.
Yeah.
Woo.
You feel you need to
Hoya!
go like this.
Yeah.
It's a vast amount of money,
yeah.
but it was a vast amount of lying that they did.
Yeah.
So the essence of this is the 2020 elections happened. Biden won. Trump said there was fraud, and he claimed specifically that there were like 3.2 million votes that were changed by the company that runs the voting machines. So they use machines to vote, and Dominion is the company that runs those machines.
They changed the algorithm,
He outrightly
messed with
accused
the
them
data.
of rigging the elections. So they went to court, because they're about an $80 million company. Their entire future depends on their reputation for running clean elections. So they go to court. In the process, this is a defamation case. In the process of establishing whether the case can go ahead properly, there's a pre-trial. And in that pre-trial, it emerges that Fox News was backing the Make America Great Again, the MAGA
And we've
radicals.
known this for a while.
Absolutely, but they're not the only ones. So you've got organizations who are further right than them, like Breitbart. It's not pronounced that way. Breitbart and things like that. Yes. And Fox News realizes they're starting to lose traction. The radicals, the MAGA heads, are drifting to these other channels. So they start doubling down on all of these lies.
Clickbait, essentially. Yeah.
And you've got reprehensible people like Tucker Carlson and people like that who are on air for them. Knowingly, it emerges in the trial, they knew these were lies, they still go to air and amplify those lies, and knowingly did so. So they get to this point now where they're clearly going to lose the case, and they decide to settle rather than go on air to this audience and admit that they were lying, or be proven in court, because then like the owner, Rupert Murdoch, and Tucker Carlson and people like that would have to testify in court, either perjure themselves or admit that they knowingly lied.
But imagine what would unravel in that sense, because I think everyone could see what was playing out. To a large degree, it felt like, okay, this is complete propaganda, the majority of what we were absorbing over that period. So this is the court of public opinion. I can't believe that this is going to make this go away. Surely it mustn't just make this go away.
No, because your observation about how obvious it is from the outside.
Yeah.
You're looking at a captive audience who are in this echo chamber where they're hearing the same information.
Politicized by this.
Exactly. And so Fox News is one of the main voices within this echo chamber. If they don't have to go on air and say that they lied, there's always going to be doubt about whether they lied. And so they keep their audience and they keep their advertising
all they need
revenue.
is Tucker or a Donald Trump to stand up and say, fake news.
Absolutely. So I'm afraid it probably is going to go away. And Dominion failed the American democracy by accepting this. But I mean, remember I said they're worth 80 million?
Yeah.
They've just got a payout of 787 million. They've got 10 times their possible value.
Just change the
cash.
name, that'll handle the name change. They'll be okay. Roy, I'm really sorry that we didn't get to artificial external wombs, which I think is absolutely amazing. We'll touch on that next week, hopefully. Cool. Buddy, thank you so much. I can literally feel the smoke coming out of my ears. It's a crazy world, but it does impact us. Even Sudan impacts us here. It's a global solution that we're looking for, and we are part of that. I love this. Thank you so much.